Welcome to the 7 People Podcast, your guide to creating irresistible organizations.
And we're back with season 2. So first of all, thank you Personio, our allies, to making it happen that we can record season 2. And we're back, Paul. Welcome.
Hey, Flo.
And the first episode in season 2, we will talk about benefits, but not just benefits, but benefits that actually benefit. And my first question to you is, why do benefits actually matter?
So the reason why benefits matter is because the whole idea of them is to make your life easier, right? The whole point is to improve your employee experience, but just really support like your security and well-being. So that is why they matter.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of companies kind of throw benefits and perks at their employees, like a standardized pension package or whatever, and then hope for the best. But it is indeed what you say, important for the well-being and engagement of your employees. But I also notice in recruitment, it also really helps me to attract talent because, I don't know, salary is just one thing. But if you have a really cool benefit package, I think also sometimes that will help, help attract really good talent.
What are some examples that have helped you in the recruitment process?
For example, I think actually the 7 People one is a really good example because I joined 7 People actually to learn a lot and for my own development. And then it was told to me that they have Big Friday. So once a month we don't work for a client and then we have a full day filled with learning sessions, training. And then I thought, okay, that is a really cool benefit because I am here really to invest in myself and develop myself. So that was one of the things that I thought was really cool. And also the fact that there wasn't a standardized learning and development budget, but that you actually get dedicated time to work on your development. These, for example, in my own case, were things that really persuade me to choose for 7 People.
So that sounded a lot. It was like in the learning and development area. So having the opportunity. I mean, it sounded like not necessarily the learning budget, which we see in companies is quite popular, but like was about having the time and space to do that, right?
Exactly. And that is something that is quite difficult, I think, because you get dragged away by the day-to-day. But to actually get dedicated time, that was something that I thought was really special and interesting.
Yeah, and I think as well, like that links to, which I guess we can talk about a bit later, is like why are we doing these things? And then for you, like you were in the moment of your life where you know what I want to learn. Mm-hmm. So the fact that there was the like these opportunities on offer like really attracted you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it also helps you attract the right talent because maybe also someone that is not interested in that, but maybe more interested in only salary or whatever, are then like, oh, but I don't care about that. I only care about these parts of my job. So I think that is why benefits are so important. It really helps you attract the right talent.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with that, like you're also making me think about different people need different things at different stages in their life, right? Mm-hmm. It might be the time of life where you need money, so you're going to be like, I'm less concerned about things like learning budget or even pension because I want to have the money in my pocket right now. Like maybe you're saving up to buy a house, for example, and you want a lot of money right now, so therefore you would be attracted to a company which has maybe a more focus on compensation and less on benefits, right? Whereas when you go through different stages in your life, like maybe when you become a parent, then companies that have enhanced parental leave is going to be way more interesting to you.
And to be honest, I'm always a bit confused because now we talk about compensation, salary, benefits, parental leave.
Yeah.
What are actually the difference between like compensation in general, maybe benefit, perks, and just stuff that you need to do your job properly?
Yeah, and I think this is a funny one because I think like there are a lot of gray areas, right? For example, when we're talking about compensation, right, I would say your compensation package is made up of your base salary, maybe any variable compensation, maybe there's an equity plan in place. But for me, that falls under the category of total compensation, which is like a subcategory of the umbrella of total rewards.
Yeah.
And included in total rewards is
benefits.
So but you talk to different people, you get a different answer. Some people like see equity as a benefit. Like for me, it's definitely in the realm of compensation, and then even in benefits, it gets confusing again. I think, like we were talking about at 7 People, how we have the monthly budget. What's it called?
Do something fun for yourself budget. We got right.
Yeah, right.
And
everyone
choose
gets that,
whatever.
and then and maybe some people are using it to pay for their ClassPass membership. Some people are using it for a massage every month, which is important, right? Because it's different people have different needs, and we should enable flexibility as much as possible. But like for me, that is more a perk.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
I see that as more of a perk.
What is the difference between a benefit and a perk?
So for me, benefits are way more foundational. And so it's like this is pension, leave types, more in like that. To me, it's more like foundational, whereas perks are nice to have. So for example, we have a team trip every year, right?
Yeah.
But for me, that's not a benefit. You might say the sentence, I benefit from a team trip every year. And don't get me wrong, it does attract people and improves our employee experience. But we could live without a team trip every year, right? So it's more like a perk. It's a perk of my job. Or for example, a laptop, right? Having a nice laptop is a perk because you need it to do your job. So benefits are more like structural and foundational, whereas perks are more aimed at improving the employee experience.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of companies also kind of communicate when they talk about benefits and perks. Oh, and a laptop to do your job. And I'm like, but that's literally the bare minimum just to do your job, right? Like, how is that a benefit or a perk?
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe indeed a really good, fancy new laptop then is a perk. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Like I need a laptop to do my job, so I could just have like a basic one, but then we're given really nice MacBooks, so then that's a perk. But I wouldn't say it's a benefit. And you see that a lot on job descriptions on company websites, and then they're saying, you get like this many days off a year, but like, is that really that much of a benefit? Whereas if we're saying, okay, we have like enhanced parental leave types, a lot of companies are still just doing like the statutory minimum. That for me is when we're starting to talk more about benefits.
And then there's also something that I noticed on a lot of career pages and like at a lot of companies is that they really promote like the flashy perks, like a ping pong table, Friday drinks. Because normally there's a really long list on benefits, and then 50% of the benefits are actually these type of things. So what do you think about that? Does that really help with employee engagement and really make a big impact? Or
so again, for me, these are perks.
Perks,
right? The ping pong table, the Friday drinks, like these are perks, and I wouldn't necessarily use them for attracting talent, because most people would say like, I'd rather use that money, put it in my salary.
Yeah,
right?
And it is confusing. Because when I'm reading up, for example, when I'm a new a person that's looking for a job, they always say benefits and perks, and there's a really long list of all of these things. I'm not if I were not an HR professional, I wouldn't know the difference. So would you then, for example, recommend companies to make a difference between benefits and then perks, or
I think they do, right? Like I think most companies do make the distinction, but it's like if we're going to offer these things, mainly on the perk side, like the purpose of Friday drinks and the purpose of the ping pong table is to give people the chance to like talk in person and get to know each other, build a relationship of trust. Yeah, exactly. And that's more what I'm trying to drive. If I don't have a problem with that in my company, then I don't necessarily need to implement that.
No. Okay.
So that's why, again, like you were talking about earlier, linking it to like company strategy and what we're actually trying to achieve. So yeah, for example, the company trip one, when we're working in a more like hybrid way, we don't always see each other that much because the day I'm in the office, you're not in the office. So therefore, like the trips are a good way to connect with people, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm using those for, not necessarily as a talent attraction tool.
Okay. And remote work then? Do you think that is a benefit or a perk or?
Yeah. So like maybe I personally have a controversial opinion, but like I don't necessarily see it as a benefit, or at least in the type of companies that we work with. So like let's say scale up companies, like it's for me just like an expectation. Like if you said, yeah, come work at this company, we have hybrid working, I'd be like, so does every other company. How is that? That's my minimum expectation. It's not a benefit.
No, exactly. And also,
so for me, it's more about that's like, this is just how we work at this company, right? Like in my personal opinion, like when we're talking about hybrid working, because different companies have a different approach, it's just like, that's how we work at this company. For me, that's not a benefit.
What do you think common pitfalls are with benefits?
Yeah, so the main pitfall that you see most companies fall into is they'll just like copy and paste because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas like what you really want to do is solve live issues, right?
Yeah.
So you need to think about what are our company values? What are we actually trying to achieve with this? What does our workforce look like? So yeah, to use the example of pension, maybe some people are not really interested in that because we have a really young workforce, or maybe they want to use that money in a different way. So like it's always better to look at flexible options. So yeah, just not copy and pasting, being like, okay, what is what am I trying to drive here? What behavior am I trying to drive? What live business issue do I want to solve? So for example, like maybe there's an issue with recruitment or with engagement, and so we have to tailor the package to the benefits package to fix that.
And for example, let's say you have a problem with recruitment. What is then a benefit that you can maybe implement to attract better talent? Is there one size fits all approach for this?
So there's never a one size fits all approach, especially not with benefits. But I think again, it will link to who are we targeting, right? Because if we're targeting like really specialist people, maybe who are more senior, then they're going to be a little bit older. Maybe they're at the kind of age where they're having kids. Then like examples of benefits like enhanced parental leave is like something you want to look at.
To implement. So what you're actually saying is not let the loudest voice in the room decide, but really look at the data, look at your workforce, see, okay, if 70% of our workforce is above 50, maybe it's then interesting to do something with pension. If 30 or 40% of our workforce has young kids, maybe do something with parental leave, these type of things.
You just made me think about like the feeds plan, right? So the bike plan, and this is a good example of when we're fixing an issue for the loudest person in the room because they want to get their new bike, and then all of a sudden we have to implement a bike plan for the whole company, but only like 3% of people use it. So there's all this like work, and it takes a lot of effort, and the engagement is pretty low. So another mistake I see is that if we're in a company, then the founder's friend creates a new app, and then all of a sudden we're like looking at implementing a new app at the company, and it's like, why? It's like, again, we need to always link it back to the strategy. Like, what are we actually trying to achieve here? I mean, we talked about pension a couple of times, and I think that's definitely something you want to look at, because my opinion is that now that's just seen as like a standard benefit these days. Like one thing that's really trending at the minute is more on the wellbeing side. And also if we think about like perks and benefits, right? And if I go to a company and they have a gym on site, for me, I don't see that as a benefit. I see that as a perk. And the reason for that is, like, do you really want to work out next to your boss?
I don't. No.
But if we have like a company gym membership, then that gives me a bit more flexibility, right? So, but then again, you're going to see, okay, well, they're probably going to have a deal with one gym, and then that's not as fun. So this is why, again, you can think about it more flexibly. Okay, well, maybe we can get a corporate deal with ClassPass or OneFit or whatever, like enabling the people to use it as flexibly and tailor-made to them as possible.
Clear. So indeed, not the loudest voice, make it flexible and look at your data.
okay, for example, even with the pension, right? Like it's generally understood that it's hard to get your money out of the Netherlands into another pension pot in another country, right? So if I'm an expat and I'm only wanting to stay in the Netherlands for a short amount of time, then do I really want to have that money as a pension?
Yeah.
Or is it better, maybe I want it just for me, so then I can invest it in the stock market myself. Maybe I think I'm going to get a better return on investment in the stock market. So I think like what we see in the market is flexibility in benefits is like the huge trend.
Okay.
Even small things, right? Like we have the holiday allowance.
Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, that's mandatory. But like some people prefer to get it paid out every month. Some people like the fact that they're saving a little bit every month, and then they get paid out in May, and then they can use it to pay for their holiday. It's complicated from people operations perspective, like in terms of administering it. But if possible, if you have the capacity, then offering flexibility in that's one thing. Also, like with commuter allowance, right? Like thinking about what kind of behaviors we're trying to drive here. So like, are we giving people like NS cards to get the train? Or are we paying for them to drive to the office?
Question though on this, because some people don't live, for example, in Amsterdam and they work in Amsterdam, and then people that live far away get an NS card or get travel allowance to travel to the office. But the people that live close to the office don't get anything, but they do pay quite a high rent to live close by. Is that fair?
Yeah, so that's something you have to think about, right? Like, because a lot of companies, if you're living, like, for example, we live in Amsterdam, right? So a lot of companies that when you're living within like 10 kilometers of the office, you don't get any type of mobility budget. Whereas, and what you're saying is, well, it's actually cost me more to live here.
Yeah.
So one thing I like is, if we are offering them something, then actually you can incentivize them to cycle. Because this is another thing about companies is like, if we can have a positive impact on the world, that's what we want to do, right? So like we want to encourage people to use like greener methods of transport. So some companies, you can't even get the, or they're trying to really discourage you driving to work, which is why they offer you like
an NS card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you offer some kind of mobility budget to the people that live near the office, then that will incentivize them to use.
So you say just
energy.
Give a mobility budget of XYZ and just give it to everyone, and not only to the people that live far away.
Yeah,
because that is more fair.
Yeah, I don't know if fair is the right word, right? Because like,
yeah, I'm trying to.
Because then they get that. Because then the people who like live far away are going to be like, well, hold on, like I'm having to spend my mobility budget on the train, whereas you're making some money.
Yeah.
So this is why you have to think about, like, what are we trying to achieve and what behaviors do we want? That's so when it comes into it, and then it's a decision at the end for the company. But like again, my advice is to make it as flexible as possible.
And you also talked about trending benefits. I mean, I've read the Aleo benefit report of 2024.
Yeah.
We 7 people in Aleo drafted this together. Yeah. What did you see as trending in that report? In 2024, by the way, the 2025 one is coming out in March. But
yeah, so what I see in that, and I see generally is like a lot of companies are still quite light on the well-being benefits, which is interesting because that's a huge area of interest for people, right? So when we're talking about well-being, like there's different elements to it, but like there's physical well-being, mental well-being, financial well-being, social well-being, and then different tools to enable that. So I already mentioned on like the physical side, maybe we want to offer something like ClassPass. Then on the mental health side, there's really good tools like Open Up or Headspace.
It's trending. Why do you think it's important?
If you look at like the new generations coming through, like Gen Z, it's important to them. This is like a big focus to them. They look at their parents and the older generations, and then they see like a culture of working hard and drinking, and then they're like, actually, that's not for me. So they're more into the wellness side of things. So the whole like living to work rather than working to live. So that's why I see that as trending.
So that is why well-being benefits are trending. But still, I think 35%, when I've read the report, 35% of companies still don't offer any well-being initiatives. Like that is quite a big, massive missed opportunity, right? So what would you recommend to these companies? Or like, why do you think it's important for them to start implementing this?
The reason that you want to implement them is because actually it's going to improve your productivity, right? Like, can you imagine if people are like super healthy, like working out, eating healthy, and these are other apps you can get, like nutrition apps, for example. We're having someone to talk to through Open Up. Then actually it means we are better co-workers and have more energy for our work. So that implements productivity. So actually is like benefits companies from a profit perspective. So that's why it's like an area that companies should work at. If I look at like the scale up segment that we work in, the reason why companies don't really have them is because they're thinking, okay, well, we only have X amount of investment. We only have this much runway in terms of like cash in the bank. So it's like, let's focus on compensation and the more core benefits like pension before they're getting to the well-being benefits.
Okay. And how, because pension is always one, but how can you then make sure to persuade the leadership to indeed implement a killer benefit package? Like, how can you make sure you talk in their language? And how can you show them that it is important to like have benefits that are tweaked to the company values, to your workforce, etc.?
Yeah, so first of all, like making sure that there is, as I've just mentioned, if we can prove that it's going to improve profits in the company, right? That's one thing, or like indeed solve live issues. So we already talked about recruitment. If there's an issue in recruitment, like, okay, what can we do to help that? So maybe we're struggling to recruit right now. Why is that? Or if we have like a lower engagement score, why is that? So making sure we're solving live business challenges. And I'm thinking about like parental leave right now because that's another really trending one. So as we spoke about before, like a lot of companies are still just offering the statutory minimum. If you can offer something that enhances that, then that's going to help you like attract a whole segment of
young
people.
parents.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I don't know whether you see this flow, but I see it a lot coming by on like LinkedIn and other news sources that I read. Like people are talking about parental benefits.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, and I think also it is of course attracting young parents, but also helping them, because it is quite a challenging time. Because, for example, you work 40 hours a week and you have a full-time job, and then you come home and you cannot like have a moment to use your Headspace app or go to the gym or do all these type of well-being stuff because you don't have time for it because you have young children, right? So I think, having that extra parental leave also will maybe help parents, with doing their job the best as they can in the time that they're in, if you understand what I'm saying. So
and like that's when we were talking about earlier about benefits being more foundational, right? And that's what we're talking about. It's like how the benefit should help me through a stage of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is where flexibility comes in, I think, because everyone is different. And for example, I don't have children at the moment. I don't really care yet about parental leave and these type of things. I would love to offer it as from an HR perspective, of course, to all my employees, but for me, it's not interesting.
Yeah.
For me, it sounds quite complicated now that I have to do a whole analysis on my workforce, see in what stage of life all my employees are, tweak all those benefits. And then it feels like every year or something you are tweaking the benefits for the good of your workforce, right?
Yeah.
How can you make that more easy and practical?
Yeah, so like the way the market's going is making things as tailor-made as possible.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, there's tools like Alio, and there's other flexible benefits operators in other countries. But what you ideally want to get to is like X amount of budget is allocated to benefits, and then you can spend that however you want. Yeah.
And why, for example, is an allowance then more interesting than just giving cash to employees to spend the money the way they want it?
The reason for that is because of like tax implications, right? Because if I just give you X amount of money, then that's just going to get taxed as your salary. Yeah. So whereas what we want to do is put it in a place which can be used to maximum effect.
Okay. I also prepared a little dilemma on this topic for this week. Would you rather have a slightly higher salary with no additional benefits, or a slightly lower salary but with a flexible benefit package? Like you can choose from healthcare to wellness budget, learning allowance, pension, you name it.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Yes.
That is a hard one. I would go for the second one.
Why?
Just because then like it would mean I'm going to actually use it. If I have just more money, I'm just going to keep it and spend it on fun stuff.
Yeah. Spend it on restaurants.
But it's a good question.
Rent.
Like it's a good question because you talk to some people, they're like, I don't care. They're like, I just want more money. So this is why you have to really think about it. And I like the way you pose the question, right? Because the reason why benefits are interesting for companies is because the money goes further, right?
Yeah.
So like if everyone is paying for their own individual gym membership, then that's going to cost more in total money than if we do it as a company. But if the engagement is going to be low, it's not really worth it. But when you're designing your like total reward strategy, you have to think about these things.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to offer like super high salaries, then we don't really need to be that attractive on the benefits. Whereas if we are not as high on the salary, then that's why we need to offer benefits to help people support them through their lives.
Yeah. And I think also what we talked about before is that you maybe also as an employer want to stimulate certain behavior, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're just going to only pay out more salary, then people will just start spending it on the day-to-day rent, food, whatever, primarily stuff to live. But if you, for example, offer a flexible benefit package that also maybe triggers you to spend it on well-being or whatever, it also helps your employees maybe to become a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's about like what kind of company do you want to be, right? Are we super competitive? We want to do things fast and achieve our goals, and let's just have a high salary.
Yeah.
Or are we a more like collaborative, like clan culture where we want to really support people? So in that sense, when it comes to sick leave, right? This is another benefit. You can get enhanced sick leave. Mm-hmm. Some companies, when you're long-term sick leave, are paying 100% of your salary.
Yeah.
Whereas some companies are just doing like the
70%.
Yeah, but it's not even 70% of your salary. It's 70% of the maximum daily wage, right? In the Netherlands, right? Whereas some companies will top that up to 70% of your salary. So, what kind of company do you want to be, right? Do we want to, when people are sick, like really support them, or in this scenario, we're going to go down to 70%. That is driving you. That is driving the behavior of getting people back to work as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of things you need to think about.
So there are a lot of buttons that you can push around benefits to actually stimulate certain behavior in organizations.
Exactly.
To make it practical, let's say tomorrow I'm at my new client. They don't have a big budget, so they cannot use fancy tool like Aleo or tools related to that. Is there then something creative or out of the box or something that you can do as a company with little budget, like a cool benefit or a perk, that will help you to engage your employees more? Yeah.
So on this one, like I always look at the leave types, because I'm already paying you your salary, like, and that's your salary.
Yeah.
And if I give you extra leave, then there's no like actual cost to the company, right? Like if I speak to the finance team, they're going to say, yeah, we're losing a day's work. Like this person has a cost to the day. But if we say, okay, well, like how about if we all focus on achieving our goals, then you get an extra day off. Mm-hmm. So there's no actual cost to the company, but can also drive productivity.
Okay.
So that's what I would do. So like for me, I would focus more on the leave types.
Be a bit creative with leave types.
If we're in like a budget strict environment.
So you mean with leave, you mean holiday, parental leave, sick leave, these type of things?
I mean more like on the paid time off, indeed.
Yeah, paid time off. Okay. Yeah. And
but like my general advice, when I first starting at a company, if I'm reviewing the benefits, is looking at the leave types in general. Like what we're doing with parental leave, sick leave. Like maybe not the sick leave, right? Because people don't ever think they're going to get sick, so they don't really look at that policy until they are sick. But on the parental leave, I think is a really important one. And then on the well-being side as well, what are we doing? What are we doing on that? And I mentioned like a few different apps like ClassPass, Headspace, other nutrition apps. But actually what you want to do is find a provider which will like have all of them. So if we look at providers that offer more like holistic well-being programs, and people get X amount of budget to spend on what they need.
Okay, very clear. And because we also talked about linking the benefits to your values, what are like really fun, cool, creative examples that you have of companies that literally did this? So there's one client of ours, Go Booney, and they rent out camper vans, and they have as a benefits that you can rent a camper van and go, I don't know, explore Europe in a camper van. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that always made me think of the ticket swap example, right? Like if you work at ticket swap, then you get like priority for buying X amount of tickets every year for events you want to go to.
And these type of things are, I think, really cool to kind of link the values of your company or the product of your company to your benefits, because in that way also you're attracting people that really, really think your product or what you do or your values are really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Benefits that actually benefit. For me, the key takeaways of this podcast is really make sure that you audit your benefit. So really look at what is actually being used and what is not being used, and maybe get rid of the stuff that is not being used. Ensure it is inclusive. And in that way, look at your workforce and make sure that you're not only listen to the loudest voice in the room. Look at your workforce and see what stage of their life are they in and what might they need. I mean, I think it became very, very clear that flexible benefits are the key because, otherwise you keep tweaking every year maybe. And if you have something that can offer a very flexible benefit package that people can choose themselves where they want to spend their money on, that would really help. And communicate and test. I think there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and maybe along the way your company culture changes, stuff changes. So it's not a set-in-stone thing. Keep tweaking it until it's perfect.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I heard you say a lot in this podcast, like what's cool, creative, and fun, but and like maybe it sounds boring to you when I'm talking about pension and parental leave, right? But like if you look at it, like parental leave benefits are quite underdeveloped at a lot of companies. So maybe that's not the most not the answer you wanted to hear, right?
It is, maybe it has a big impact. It can have a big impact. So maybe that's also actually a fifth takeaway. Like what has a big impact on your workforce? So what can have a big impact on the life?
Like also on the mobility side as well, right? Yeah. Like again, maybe not that fun. Okay, thinking about commuting to work, but since there's like the big trend of back into office, and a lot of companies value the face-to-face collaboration. Like, what can we do to support that? So, like my personal opinion is like let's start with the foundation things first. Yeah. Once those are in place, then we can look at like the more fun things. But parental leave, mobility, and then also learning as well.
Yeah.
And well-being. And then once you're kind of like looking at what are we doing in these areas, then you're going to be in a good place.
So build a strong foundation first, look at what your workforce needs, and then do the fun, creative stuff.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for your insights during this podcast. I really enjoyed talking about benefits with you. Thank you, listeners, for listening again. Bye.